Let's turn today to Matthew's Gospel, chapter 7 and verse 15. Here Jesus warned us about false prophets as we were considering in our last study. We saw that false prophets are not necessarily those who are preaching dangerous heresies. There are various types of false prophets. 2 Peter chapter 2 warns us about them. The Epistle of Jude warns us about them. But they are not necessarily those who are saying that Jesus Christ is not God or that Jesus Christ did not come in the flesh. Those are also false prophets. Or that those who don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ or His virgin birth. These are also false prophets. But here he is particularly speaking about those more deceptive false prophets who probably sometimes don't even feel that they are false prophets. Who probably don't even realize that they are being deceived by Satan and being used by Satan to deceive others. People who have a partial understanding of truth and stand up claiming to be God's representatives. These are the ones we have to be very careful about. Remember, a glass of milk with a few drops of poison in it is always more dangerous than a whole glass of poison. Why? Because the whole glass of poison we shall identify and stay away from straight away. But that glass of milk, which looks so good, with a few drops of poison, may catch us unawares. And when truth is mingled with error, it is more dangerous than pure error, because pure error can more easily be detected. But when a person is proclaiming truth, or half-truth, half the truth, mingled with error, then we need to be more careful. And we need not be so afraid of those false prophets who are proclaiming error 100%. But we need to be more careful of those false prophets who proclaim 90% of the truth and leave out that important 10%, without which we don't have the whole truth. So we see that there are different degrees of false prophets. Beware of false prophets. In the context, verse 13 and 14, those who make the narrow gate, this needle's eye, wider than God made it. And therefore, they get more people in. Jesus said, few will find it, this way to life, because the gate is so small and the way is so narrow. But when a person is interested in numbers, when a preacher is interested in large numbers, when he's boasting about the numbers of people that come to hear him speak, you can be fairly sure that he's in danger of becoming a false prophet if he's not one already. Jesus and the apostles were never interested in numbers. They were always interested in the quality of disciples that they made. Jesus never boasted about the number of people who attended his meetings or the number of people he healed of their sicknesses. When we concentrate on numbers, we usually sacrifice quality and end up in danger of becoming false prophets. If we are interested in quality, we shall hold up the needle's eye. That standard of life proclaimed in the Sermon on the Mount is the standard of life for disciples. And if we seek to build a church, we will seek to build a church of people who have that standard of life. Now, we cannot guarantee that everyone who comes to our church will necessarily live by that standard. But we should not be guilty of the crime of not proclaiming that standard constantly in our church. Then we are guilty. We are to proclaim clearly, this is the narrow gate. This is the narrow gate. Even Jesus had a Judas Iscariot in his flock. So we will have Judas Iscariots in our flock. 8% of Jesus' flock were Judas Iscariots. 8% of our flock may be Judas Iscariots too. But Jesus was never guilty of hiding the size of that narrow gate as a needle's eye. We shouldn't be guilty of that either. Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing. In other words, they have the right doctrine. The clothing is the doctrine, that which we wear on the outside. Appearance before men of being right and like a lamb. But inwardly are ravenous wolves. They are eager to get something from the flock for themselves. Beware of those preachers and pastors who are interested in getting what you have, either your money or gifts from you, etc. Usually they are false prophets. Jesus was not interested in getting things from people. He was not interested in people's money. He was interested in their souls. The apostles were not interested in people's money. They were interested in people's sanctification. That's the mark of a true prophet. He's not interested in what we can give him, but he's interested in our sanctification. And Jesus said, you will know false prophets by their fruits. It's very easy to identify a false prophet. Look at his life. Look at his spirit, not his doctrine. That's very important. Unfortunately, many believers seek to identify false prophets only by their doctrine. It's true that there are false prophets who come with false doctrine, but that is the easiest thing to identify. But what is more subtle is when a person comes with the right doctrine but with the wrong life. So remember, dear friends, there are two types of false prophets. Those who come with wolves' clothing and who are wolves. They are easy to identify. Wrong doctrine and a wrong life. But what is more dangerous is those who come with sheep's clothing, the right doctrine, but the wolf's life inside. You will know them not by their words, not by their doctrines, not by their eloquence, and listen to this, not even by their spiritual gifts, but by their fruits. Very often people identify a man of God by his spiritual gifts. Unfortunately, the vast majority of believers tend to think that if a man's got gifts, he's a man of God. But Jesus said, no, by their fruits you shall know them, not by their gifts. If you will keep this simple test before you, you can be protected from being deceived by false prophets. Not by their gifts, but by their fruits. Grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes. If you find grapes hanging on thorn bushes, you can be pretty sure somebody's planted it there. Figs are not gathered from thistles. If you find figs hanging from thistles, you can be sure it's an artificial one, put up there by someone to deceive you. A good tree bears good fruit, but a rotten tree bears bad fruit. Matthew 7:18, a good tree cannot produce bad fruit, nor can a rotten tree produce good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. It's not a question of gift, it's a question of fruit. So then, a repetition of what is mentioned in verse 16. You will know them not by their gifts, by their fruit. Even though Jesus has said made the statement twice in the space of a few verses, yet we find today most believers are not able to identify a person by fruits. They look for gifts, and therefore they go astray. Jesus spoke about gifts later on, and that we shall come to. But consider here, what is the way by which we can have good fruit? Good fruit is not produced by hanging grapes on thorn bushes or figs on thistles. In other words, it's not a question of producing one right attitude by human effort and hanging it on our life so that other people see it. Is that how a mango tree produces mangoes? Is that how a coconut palm produces coconuts? By tying coconuts on its branches? No. It comes from the life within. And that's the point here. A good tree cannot produce bad fruit. If the tree is good, it will produce good fruit. It's not a question of tying good fruit onto it. It's a question of the life within. And in another passage, Jesus says, make the tree good, and the fruit will also be good. In other words, don't concentrate on the fruit if you want good fruit. That's the point. But concentrate on the tree, on the roots. Make sure that the tree itself is good, and the fruit will automatically be good. You don't have to worry about it. But if the tree is bad, in other words, your inner heart attitude is bad, you haven't repented, you haven't really set things right, your conscience is not clear, no matter what you do, you can give people an impression, hang good mangoes here and there, and hang good coconuts, and give people an impression that you are good and clean, but it's all a deception. Have you seen these plastic fruit, plastic oranges and plastic bananas? They look more real than the real ones. No life in them. And there's a lot of synthetic Christianity like that, which is worth nothing. Make the tree good, which means let Jesus lay the axe, first of all, as we considered in Matthew 3, to the root of that other tree, the flesh. Let him lay the axe to the root of that tree. Put to death that which is of the flesh, so that through the Holy Spirit another life can come in. Another nature, not manufactured, but partaken of. Not imitated. It's not a question of imitating Christ, but of partaking of His life. There's a world of difference between the two. To imitate is to hang good fruit on a bad tree. To partake of the life is to change the very nature of the tree so that it is a good tree within, and it doesn't have to worry about imitating. Automatically the life comes forth. A cat doesn't have to imitate other cats. It behaves like a cat spontaneously. This is what Jesus is emphasizing here. Make the tree good, and then it'll produce good fruit. But if you don't listen to this exhortation, every tree that does not bear good fruit, it's not a question of doctrine. Good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire.